My god, it is very hot here in Ohio. Like, why is it hitting the 90s in the middle of May? So sorry about the air conditioning sounds in the background. I will edit them as quiet as I can. But hello, I am Lexi from Lexi Rose Reads, and I have another Netgalley Spotlight. I know we just did one earlier this week, but I have finished book 3 in the series, so I have to share my thoughts. So, this one is called The Queen and the King by Jeanette Rose and Alexis Rune again, and it is the final installment of Hades and Persephone's story. It is not the end of the series. The series will continue with a new couple as our main character going forward. But let's get into the synopsis first to start with. God of the dead, king of the underworld, the unseen, the renowned, a king without his queen. They were at odds for what felt like months living together, and just when he finally felt they were on stable footing, she's again wrenched from his grasp. Is this their true destiny? To be torn from each other over and over again? Yet Demeter could never count on their mental connection, one as tied to the underworld as they are. Too powerful and too old for even Demeter to touch. Goddess of Spring, the maiden, the mistress, the venerable one. The queen without her king. It's another day on Olympus as her mother's carefully guarded secret, never seen, never heard, except for the dark, mysterious man who visits her dreams. One who keeps insisting they know each other. Not just know each other, he states quite clearly, they're married. Destiny, fate, fortune, kismet. Time's up. Yet the lack of memory isn't their only problem. The underworld is under attack, and the titans are loose. Blood will be spilled, the destroyer of worlds will awaken, and nothing will be the same. We got a lot going on here, and part of what I couldn't do last time is I couldn't say exactly what happened, because I can't remember what happened at the end of book 2 or at the beginning of this book. Simply because I read them back to back. Like I finished the second one, I immediately started the third one before I filmed my review, and couldn't remember where the distinction cut off. What happens is Persephone was taken by her mother Demeter. Demeter's not very happy that she's with Hades. You know, she's been trying to keep Hades away from Persephone. You know, Persephone's whole life essentially, and so she kidnaps her and be like, oh, I'll save him because Hades was injured and dying basically from like necrosis, sepsis type stuff. At this point, it was going to go that way. So in exchange, Persephone agreed to have their fate bond severed to save Hades' life. Much to Hades' dismay about her doing this, Persephone is taken by Demeter, and Demeter does, what Demeter does. She has Persephone's memory stolen, so that Persephone does not remember anything about meeting Hades. She doesn't remember ever living in the mortal realm. She doesn't remember any of it. Pluto's industries, none of it. None of it is remembered by Persephone. And she just continues her life as if she never went to the mortal realm and is listening to obeying her mother's every command, or her mother's going to punish her. And, I feel like now might be a good time to mention, while she is in Demeter's care, there are several trigger warnings for this book, including domestic violence, attempted SA, and emotional and physical abuse. So, take that with any precautions you need to take. I read the trigger warnings. This was very nice. They did put the trigger warnings at the beginning of the book for us, which is very helpful, I feel, for when reading. Because I know, like on Storygraph, you can put in the triggers, so other people can see them, and I know there's sites you can check trigger warnings. However, I really do like when authors do put them in the beginning of the book, just to give you a heads up in case you didn't look it up, or someone didn't share it yet. Or if, it's not a very popular book, they're not going to have trigger warnings yet, if it just came out. I do appreciate the trigger warnings that these two gave us. The domestic violence ones are a little bit higher. The attempted SA one happened several times. The first time, more on the minor scale, not very detailed. It doesn't, the second instance in it does not go all the way to a full assault, but it is still fairly detailed, so I would keep that in mind when reading this book. All that being said, I really like this one. I think book 2 kind of suffers a little bit from middle child syndrome, middle book syndrome, where the first book is great and the second one is more of a filler. It's not necessarily bad in that sense, but the second book, in my opinion, is probably my least favorite out of these three so far. Book 3 definitely was up there. I had no problems thinking 4.5 stars for this one. The only thing I found a little lacking in it was the action. There is still the war with the Titans going on, and I feel like the fight scenes with the Titans could have been drawn out more. I do like a little bit of action in there. This leans more towards, the series leans towards more romance than fantasy. I feel like if we had more of the war aspects talked about a little bit more, it would be more fantasy than romance. I feel like the balance is a little skewed there, so keep that in mind that overall so far I feel like this leans a little bit more towards the romance than fantasy. Did like reading about Hades and Persephone, well, mainly Persephone because her memories are stolen, falling for each other again. So Hades starts visiting Persephone in her dreams, and I really liked listening and reading to Hades trying to win Persephone over again. He does it in a much more gentle way than what he did the first time in book 1. So I did like watching Persephone fall in love with Hades again, because I mean he never stopped loving her. He has all of their memories yet, and Persephone starts to get inklings of like deja vu where she thinks she remembers, she like starts to remember something, but it physically pains her. There is that. She eventually does get her memories back. I don't feel like that's too much of a spoiler. I mean, what book do you read where someone loses their memory and they don't like get their memory back but stolen? You know, like I just feel like in fantasy you're gonna get your memory back. You know, I haven't come across that personally. We also do see more of Demeter and Persephone's relationship, which I feel like explains some of Persephone's background. We get snippets in books 1 and 2, but this one delves more into it, and I feel like you understand where Persephone is coming with some things, like wanting her choice and how she feels about certain things, which I appreciated. Question is, and I'm blanking on the servant's name in this, but there's a servant of Demeter's that's kind of like Persephone's like lady-in-waiting type maids, you know, like a maid type thing. And she helps Persephone sneak out to see Hades because he's dating her again. And it kind of, we don't get a full explanation. I'm kind of curious as to what the motive was for this servant to help Persephone, just because in the past, it seems like this servant is very dedicated to Demeter, so I'm kind of curious as to where the servant's thoughts are going, you know? I am hoping, that being said, that's kind of my reason, but I'm hoping going forward with the series, because we're going to go to a new couple, that Hades and Persephone maybe make some cameos, just because I do like it, and I am a sucker for Hades and Persephone retellings. Like, I'll just admit that. If it says that, I'm automatically going to read it. I'm kind of a sucker, though, for, like, Greek retellings in general, but particularly Hades and Persephone ones. So I'm hoping they make cameos, or at least that Barry, our little three-headed dog, makes some cameos, because, I'm sorry, he, like, really took the whole show, you know? Overall, 4.5 stars. I would recommend this series if you like romance with a little bit of fantasy. Like I said, it's more romance than fantasy, so take that with a grain of salt. If you're looking for a ton of fantasy, it is not going to be in this series. More romance with some fantasy elements, which, my opinion, isn't bad, you know? I've been reading a lot of fantasy, so putting a little bit more romance in there isn't that big of a deal for me. I will see you guys next time. Bye!